Welcome, everybody. This is episode, what is this? Episode 60 of the Business on the Block podcast. This is being recorded, by the way, for December 27th, 2023. We are going to do a year-end review, in a sense, a look back on some of the important conversations that we have had on this program over the past 12 months around the digital media revolution and the points that we thought were relevant and will be something you should be taking note of going forward. I'm joined this week, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And your ops guy, Mike Neubauer.
Hello, happy holidays.
So for this episode, what we're going to be doing, again, this December 27th episode has been pre-recorded earlier because my two co-hosts probably have had a little too much Christmas cheer.
When are you going to pre-record it after?
Is it after? The magic of the digital media revolution. My colleague here, Mike, has put together several clips that we think would be interesting to review and comment on. And these are all related to the changing space of digital media right now, how things are being altered by blockchain, how you can benefit your own company with what you're doing, and the trends that we see emerging. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to walk us through a little bit of a trip down memory lane. Thanks, Mike.
Yes. Yeah, so it's been a hell of a year, fun year. I feel like we covered a tremendous amount of important topics week after week, and it was kind of hard to go through each episode and select some of the more relative content because a lot of it was relative. But in the interest of time, we chose, I think, about 8 of them that are, I guess, suitable for further discussion and just have some fun with as we watch ourselves from the past and comment and see what our reactions were and, see how things have changed a little bit over the course of the year. So our first video is actually from 2022, dated December 14th, 2022. And it is actually our first discussion of how ChatGPT had the potential to destroy search engines, particularly Google. So I'm going to pull this video up now, and we're going to let that roll, and we're going to be off to the side here and pausing with comments and commentary along the way. So here's video number 1, December 14th, 2022.
We live in a Google world of Web 2 where advertising drives these websites. And in the world of one answer without 400,000 results on Google, you now can have an advertising-free experience, which means these companies can't make money. And Mike, we'll get your advice on this one in a second, but basically, how do these companies make money if they can't?
Sorry, I got to pause right now because my Santa Claus beard was rocking out hard. It was definitely around the holidays, but yeah, so that was a while ago.
Monetize the ads. Mike, what do you think?
First of all, they can definitely monetize the ads. The whole purpose of social media marketing, search engine analytics is designed to, I guess, narrow your targeted audience. If this can do that directly without filtering through keywords or phrases and literally having those words and phrases come directly from the consumer, you can easily monetize that. You can retarget that. You can capture what people are thinking about at various times of the day, at various parts of the world, and then you can target your products accordingly. This whole data analytics and this whole, I guess, capture of people's information has been a godsend to the marketing world, to put it bluntly. I mean, I remember as a kid going to the grocery store and having people with clipboards literally asking you questions and surveys about products. That doesn't exist anymore. But that was the way you used to be able to get that information from your customers and then narrow down those search fields to create that targeted audience so that your marketing dollars are a little bit more focused on the return on investment.
Michelle, comments?
Look, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that it's a new world, and we've talked about that for a while, haven't we? Over a few weeks of what's going to change with Web3 and how Web2 companies are going to have to either adapt or die. And I think it's the same for businesses. I mean, I can't see that there is a bigger case than right now than there ever has been for you collecting information on your customers directly yourself, first-party data. So you have their internet, their email address, and your ability to contact them directly because you're going to need that with Web3.
Fascinating. So obviously that's been very relevant. ChatGPT has done exactly what we said. It's starting to challenge the search. The game of search is being impacted and changed. There's a lot of uproar about personnel changes going on right now. But that aside, the reality is that marketing is being changed by this new immersion of ChatGPT in the scene. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I mean, as we discussed way back when, right? I mean, you know, the advertising dollars and the marketing dollars are going to follow wherever the audience is, right? And if people are interacting with these AI platforms, it's only a matter of time before advertising and businesses start to invest in displaying and branding themselves through that medium. I think that it's going to be a little bit more complex than just your standard Google search. Everything that we've seen in development with AI over the past year has shown us that it's on the path to do that. It's going to be interesting to see the people's reaction, though, once it kind of slaps them in the face, where, you know, you ask ChatGPT for a recipe for a burger, and all of a sudden it starts offering you branded products to go out and make it taste better because that's what they're paying for.
Michelle, is this the death of search as we know it?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the talk now, particularly with GPT-4 Turbo, is that you will be able to ask it more direct, relevant, timely questions. It's not a year-old data anymore. It's, you know, only a couple of months now. And, you know, you have no doubt that they're working on the fact that it's going to be relevant, you know, in current time. So it means that once people start to get into the habit of using ChatGPT daily in their business, why wouldn't you, while you're in it, type in, is the, you know, the Pink Lotus restaurant open tonight until 10, and do they have a table available? Like, why would you go somewhere else to do that?
So I want to comment on that, though. I do think that there's going to be a changing, this concept of that ChatGPT has to be updated and it's only good until whatever month they've decided, April of 22 or whatever it may be. That's an artificial construct that we've all accepted. That's the way it's done. But like, I agree with you. And Elon Musk's point of there's no reason you can't have an updated version of this. I think that there will eventually be a real-time interactive, as you're describing, Michelle. And I think that that's going to change exactly the ratio of how algorithms perform, meaning you have to weight that data before you give an answer. And I think there's a lot of technical challenges in all that. But the point is, yeah, we're going back to a Google style world, but it's not going to be run by Google, or at least it's seemingly so right now.
Yeah.
It's conversation based instead of search based, right? I think that's really going to be one of the primary things that users need to figure out the difference on.
But one other thing, though. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, and that was our first Northern and Southern Hemisphere episode, because I was in Australia for that, for Christmas with my family.
Technology.
So we don't just do continents, we also do hemispheres.
I was going to say that the X factor in this, no pun intended, is Microsoft, because in the AI world of Google versus ChatGPT, Microsoft wasn't really the factor, and they were a funding factor, I guess, for OpenAI. But right now, that's changed. Microsoft technology and the development of AI is becoming more relevant in the conversation. So. Yep.
Well, moving on to our second clip, speaking about global continents. This one comes to us way back in February, when there were certain regulatory conversations in the mix, and certain countries and governments decided that they wanted to sort of jump into Web3 and sort of try to make their country and regulatory efforts the home base of where blockchain is developed. So enjoy this one.
Abu Dhabi startup. This is Abu Dhabi is backing a $2 billion initiative with a B to help Web3 startups. This is coming off of CoinDesk. Abu Dhabi's launched a $2 billion initiative to back Web3 and blockchain startups in the region. It's the Hub 71 and digital assets ecosystem, they call this. And they will basically provide startups a wide range of money and programs, corporate, government, private. They are very bullish in the UAE on crypto and are trying to attract that business to them. Thoughts on this? I have strong ones. We'll start with you, Michelle.
I said to my husband before the program, I said, hey, want to move to Abu Dhabi? Like, your money's available.
Lots of it.
That's my only comment right now.
Mike, what do you think? Abu Dhabi, are they going to attract the crypto industry?
So I did some business a few years ago with an extremely wealthy, globally connected individual who, and I'm quoting him, so don't shoot the messenger. UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, this is the laundromat of the world, right? You can fly a plane full of cash in there and nobody asks questions, and you can leave with it in different assets.
This is the politically
You have to
incorrect portion of the
pause
podcast.
that
Sure,
now.
and I'll take the.
All right, go ahead. Peanut gallery.
So
So
this-
the thing,
You go first, Mark, and then I'll
This is
say
not meant as a slight at any part of the world. This is Mike is quoting, but I will say that this caused a lot of uproar. We took a lot of heat on the back end of this. Go ahead, Michelle.
So I was going to say, do you know, I do not remember at all that you said that was a quote from someone, because that in our private chats and in other episodes for the rest of the year, that was attributed to the Mike Neubauer comment.
Well, I mean, again, we're trying to analyze and understand, how a market like this, which is getting a lot of scrutiny from other regulatory bodies, could survive in an area like that. And, I just thought it was a relative requote / retweet of someone else.
Yeah. So should we play the rest of it?
Yeah, let's go.
Blame for it. It just made sense the way that he put it that way. This also proves the globalization model behind the technology, where there is somebody that's racing to be the hub of where this takes place, right? And there's going to be a tremendous amount of investment that's put forth there. Will there be bad players in place? Sure. Will there have to be regulations in place in order to help secure and I guess convince different people, buyers, users of the technology that it's safe? Yes, that's an essential piece of this.
I'm going to take issue with that, Mike, just because I like to take issue with everything you say. I'm going to use a fancy financial term here: capital flight. That's the word when money leaves to go because it's more welcome somewhere else. Abu Dhabi. Let's think of it as the Swiss bank accounts in the old days in Switzerland. Abu Dhabi does not want regulation, and they do not want the centralization that you just referenced. And I agree with you that the money will go to where it is going to make the most money, and regulations be damned. Whether that's good or bad, we'll find out. But I think Abu Dhabi's in the running, China, the U.S., Middle East. One of them is going to become the central hub. The European Union was in the running, but has already passed a raft of regulations. So I'm not saying that that's bad.
So I'm going to pause it right there for a second, because that's one that actually we were sort of wrong on. In fact, certain areas of Europe have actually adopted it a little bit faster. Everything with the London Stock Exchange and things like that we've discussed here on this show. There's sort of been a pivot in understanding the value of what crypto and blockchain technology could bring to those respective economies.
Actually, and the other thing too, I think, is that Abu Dhabi has not come out as the shining light, despite the fact that they offered all this money. Like, we're at December now. That was February, and we haven't, there are not big firms flocking there or starting up there that we've heard yet. In the scheme of things this year.
So for longtime listeners of the show, they'll remember this. I've made this comment before. When there's a distinction between blockchain and crypto. The technology of blockchain is what we generally tend to focus on here, especially in the media application. For this particular clip, though, Mike, the crypto side of it, this is really a battle between centralization and decentralization. And none of the governments want decentralization. So while they make money available, the devil's in the details of, yes, you can move your company here and start your crypto project, but what do you have to do that?
Well, to Michelle's point, I think that a lot of people did not bite on that application, and they recognize that there still is centralization elements to, even governments and economies that come out and say that they want to make it a hub, right? I believe there was a couple others that we've touched on throughout the course of the year too, Hong Kong being one of them. There's a few of them that definitely surfaced as potentials. And I mean, we could be completely off base on this at this point. There could be developments that obviously take a little bit more than a year to firm up, but so far there's been crickets as far as, bigger operations starting there.
Hong Kong is trying
no one's come out.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Please.
I was going to say, no one's come out and said, they've given us $1 billion and we're moving there and here's our new whatever, have they?
Or say what credits they get or benefits they get from being there.
Yeah.
I was going to make the point that Hong Kong has been vying to become one of these crypto centers. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party is working hard to blockchain their news. You guys remember this story?
Yep.
Yeah.
So like there's another side to just here's a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course there is. No money's free.
Free money.
I'm just saying the money will go where it can magnify the quickest.
It depends what money. If I'm in the mob and I'm trying to shelter a lot of money, then yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If I'm political, if I'm a dirty politician trying to wash that money, yeah, I guess it makes sense. But again, this is really the fear of crypto in its very general naked sense to it, right? Like people think of it as this ability to wash and to kind of funnel these funds. But the truth is, man, like everything is documented. That's another part of the blockchain that I guess people aren't too familiar with yet. Like this is an open ledger system that, it's going to surface at some point where it goes when you follow this money trail.
So the vast majority of fraudulent money laundering happens actually in U.S. dollars because that is the dominant currency right now in terms of global reserve. I don't agree that this is crypto's dirty places to wash money like that. I agree, Mike. The blockchain, you're right, is it shines a light on everything. My point is, all these industries know that who makes it the friendliest for the money gets the money. And
right.
I think,
but here's the business side of it, right? So if I make $50,000 in US and I want to invest it into Forex, and I wait and I play the currency game, and I go and I withdraw it in euros because the euro is 1.5% higher. So now I made 1.5% of my money minus the fees. I could do the exact same thing with crypto, but on a global scale, because you could deposit it and withdraw it in any currency using that medium hub of this unregulated area.
so if we back this with the stories from last week that the U.S. SEC is going after Kraken and PayPal can't launch their stablecoin and all the crackdown that's happening in the regulatory world, that money is going somewhere else.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It definitely is. However, that's a different explanation. That's not an NFT-backed project by the government of Abu Dhabi. That is an exchange where people are able to connect their accounts. Businesses are able to connect their accounts in an effort to play in this Web3 sandbox.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that from a country perspective, that does require that regulation so we can avoid a lot of these issues where, there's fraudulent staking interest being paid out, or, there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars being flushed through with no explanation or accountability on where that money is or how it's or where it's going to end up. I mean, bankruptcy right now with FTX, that's already airing a lot of dirty laundry, right? You can't hide these things under this rock forever, especially if the rock really wasn't put there the right way in the first place.
I think, Michelle, your comment Earl, about people, your joke about wanting to go to Abu Dhabi, a lot of people are going to do that.
But that said, I think that it's not Silicon Valley. The weather is not as good as California. It is bloody hot there. And it's one of those where you might go there for a year or two, maybe 3 years, but you wouldn't, like, if you were a foreigner, if you're not a resident normally, I think that ultimately those sorts of places really will just wear you down.
With
67% of C corporations in the United States, and I'm making up that number because I really don't know, I didn't look it up, but they're all located in Delaware. Where the hell are they in Delaware?
Yeah, they're not actually there.
Yeah, so that's another example of how anybody can start. There's going to be broker houses. There's going to be representation all in this. They will set up those entities. It's going to become the corporate hub of where some of these things take place. And look, a lot of it will be bad. It will be more black eyes, but I think a lot of it will be good too. The true decentralized platforms and projects out there, the ones that want to do this for themselves and the community without the intermediary in between, are going to flock to those types of places. The cash flight, as you put it.
Right. I think that the business reality is that it's going to be a great move for Abu Dhabi. They're going to definitely attract the businesses and the talent that they're looking for, because if people have a small startup, if they're running a Web3 podcast and they can get paid a piece of that $2 billion, they're going to move to Abu Dhabi.
Damn, they didn't call us.
Well put.
Yeah, and look, like to that point, there's still a lot of room for growth. We haven't seen that explosion as what we predicted back in February. So, we'll see where it all ends up. But I think it's definitely interesting that, still an interesting topic of discussion for sure.
Interestingly, though, I know of a couple of businesses that moved to Dubai.
Well,
this year.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
They didn't get the Abu Dhabi money, but they went to Dubai.
But that's the point, though. Like, they're going to go where they think they have the best opportunity. There is money in that part of the world. We know that. And they don't have the draconian regulations, which, Mike, I will push back on you a bit. The European Union is cracking down on crypto. So even though they do want to have rules, in here in the States, same thing. The reality is, in the Middle East, they're not so hot to make those rules. They just want the money in there. So,
well, I mean, again, hence the explanation of the comment that created the controversy for this type of clip to begin with, right? You can bring money in and exit it out in a different medium. So there's ways that we could, explore opportunities that either crypto or blockchain in its general sense is the creative hub out there as far as the technology goes. I think that's the infrastructure piece is something that the regulatory side of things will still be a little bit behind on in these various other countries.
All right, let's go to the next clip.
So
and
the
while
next
we're doing that, I feel like we need to say to people, if they're listening to us for the first time, we do not speak that quickly like the videos are, just so that people know. They're speeded up for time to make it shorter.
Except you, Michelle, you speak like that all the time. The next video is a conversation that we had when Starbucks introduced their Odyssey platform and some of the conversations relative to layer 2 off of Ethereum. Now, this one dates back to March 1st of 2023. And, we've mentioned it on this episode and I believe a few before. on how layer twos are ultimately going to become the loyalty and reward system that a lot of these companies start instituting their marketing plans utilizing blockchain technology. So here's the clip from March 1st.
Polygon blockchain doing serious business with companies like Starbucks and MasterCard. For followers of this show, they will know we've talked about this quite a bit. MasterCard has recently launched a Web3 incubator with the layer 2 blockchain Polygon, and they're going to be helping connect artists with the fans. And separate from that, a few weeks back, Starbucks introduced their Odyssey program, which is essentially you can earn NFTs to access exclusive events and merch that is coffee related. So these things we're seeing Starbucks, MasterCard, I mean, a long list, Budweiser, Nike. There's an endless number of companies that are dabbling in this, Dunkin' Donuts. And I think that we're starting to see there more continue to do it, which means it's working. Now, it's not driving huge revenue, but I'm curious, Mike, from your perspective, one, the technology integration, and two, do you think this is a blip or trend, a desperation play because we're in a downturn, or is this really going to happen?
Many moons ago, when we first started talking on this podcast, we mentioned that at some point there's going to be a fork in the road on which blockchains cover which industries. I think it's pretty clear that Polygon is becoming the loyalty, rewards, and customer appreciation blockchain. The reason is for a number of reasons, but number one, it's backed by Ethereum. It's a layer 2 of Ethereum, so right away that has credibility. Number two, there are a significant amount of inexpensive transactions that can occur. Now, what my hope is, if this continues to evolve the way that we're seeing it with these massive organizations dipping their toes into this blockchain, I hope that we see an easier bridging process for people to link their existing wallets with Matic versus the way that the bridging process works now, because that is a big turnoff in the way that those elements could be sold as either collections or in that Web3 world where you can trade those assets back and forth.
Mike, forgive me. Can you give us a 5-second, 3-year-old overview for the Matic versus the onboarding that you want to see versus what it is now?
Imagine Ethereum is a massive highway. Polygon is the service road, right? So you have to somehow get off of the Ethereum highway into the service road, and that ramp is the bridging process. You can't just enter the service road without getting on the highway first, basically. Mm-hmm. So that is still a barrier to entry. And I'm hoping that with these companies who have a tremendous marketing budget behind them, they can come in and they can help develop better solutions that help that bridging process.
Michelle, what are your thoughts on this?
Interestingly, about 12 months ago, maybe a bit less, Polygon was really a very slow blockchain. So people who were minting NFTs on Polygon on marketplaces that had Polygon at that time, it could take several hours sometimes for the NFTs to mint. So Mike, what do you know about do you know anything about if they've addressed that kind of stuff? I mean, given everything that's going on, and this article doesn't say anything about that, so I'm wondering whether that's a problem they've solved or not.
Well, they've solved it in other layer 2s, right? So Arbitrum, right. Optimism, these are extremely fast blockchains. And they're still layer 2. They're very inexpensive. They're all based on the Ethereum network. But again, this is the fork in the road that I referenced earlier, right? Each of these various blockchains are ultimately going to be responsible for different purposes. And I think once we start defining that, we're going to start funneling the specific user based around what they need, right? Like, I mean, people could go there. But I don't go to Amazon to buy tires for my car. Right? Like I know my limits with what I want from Amazon. So people are going to show up to Polygon blockchain and interact with that blockchain for specific purposes.
I think you make a great point, Mike, and you've been banging that drum for a long while, that we're going to see the specialization of the blockchains. We even talked about trading blocks for neighborhoods. I think that you're right. I'm quoting you right now. Polygon is the loyalty, rewards, customer appreciation blockchain. That's fantastic.
I stand by that, Mike. That is right. You nailed that one early on. The loyalty rewards blockchain, which is what Polygon has really become, is setting the trend for blockchains. What is the purpose of your blockchain? Whatever you're building, it's going to become specific to its specific corner of business.
And since that video, actually, Polygon did institute a few different updates that did speed up their blockchain. So, I was incorrect in seeing that, the other layer 2s would kind of come in, because Optimism and Arbitrum, they're not picking up like Polygon has. And I think that's, just again, due to the historical record that Polygon has as it kind of relates to Ethereum. But the bridging process has become a little easier. Digital wallet platforms such as MetaMask has made that a little bit easier of a process. So all of these things are really what we're seeing in the development of how these marketing plays can be incorporated within these various layer 2s.
I think we've found this year, haven't we, that since then, that Polygon really has become the poster child of the loyalty programs. Lufthansa are on it now. There was that other one, the real estate, the home, like an Airbnb, but I can't remember what the name was, but, so it really has become that. And because of that, the price of Matic's gone up. And when big companies are thinking about using blockchain, most of them now are looking at Polygon first.
So just to be clear, the companies that are currently using Polygon for some type of loyalty reward structure, Nike, Starbucks, MasterCard, Disney, Adidas, Google Cloud. There's a lot of big name companies. And to your point, Mike, once they've got that type of traction in the financial world, there's a concept called liquidity. You want to trade your stock where the most stock's already being traded.
Yeah.
That's what they've got, the liquidity. Polygon has the money to build out for the speed because they've got the companies already there.
So much so that even some major NFT projects migrated off of chains like Solana into Polygon. I think it's Degen Gods that moved there. There was a few others, but yeah, I mean, look, it's going to create the marketplace based around the volume incentive. But I think over time, as this space developed and people realized that gas fees were just an unfortunate component of doing business on blockchain, you want to minimize those costs. They're unnecessary.
Yeah.
For those who don't know,
cheap. Polygon
some of the
is
largest
cheap.
investors in Polygon right now are major names. And I'm talking like Mark Cuban, Coinbase, the exchange. There's a big money backing Polygon. So they're well funded and they've got big clients.
So moving on to our next story. This one I threw in here just as a way to, have some fun. On May 22nd, which is Bitcoin Pizza Day, we had a really cool conversation. In fact, it was a longer conversation than I remember it, but I trimmed it down to about a 5-minute clip. So let's have some fun with Bitcoin Pizza Day.
When pizza became the unsung hero of Bitcoin's history. And this is referencing May 22nd being, it's Bitcoin Pizza Day, right? Laszlo buys 2 pizza pies for 10,000 Bitcoins back years ago. And then it was a $41 transaction that's now worth $300 million, right? The reason this matters, it's goofy. And Papa John's, by the way, still puts out shirts and things around this. Number one, it's a turning point in the evolution of digital currency. People didn't know it at the time, but it was. It's become a reference anchoring event. And I like that the fact that we're living through history right now. And we talk about this on this show, but most people are not aware. This is epic of what's happening in the world of money, and the crypto enablement of people to trade value online in a digital sense is groundbreaking. And I think we're going to look back on these days years from now. So this is more of a reminder. But on the more interesting tidbit side of things, 5% of those coins involved at the time of transaction, way back when with the pizza purchase, they're still sitting right now in the 12th largest Bitcoin wallet, which is worth $500 million, and 300 million of those 500 million are those coins from the pizza. No one knows whose wallet they are, but it's an interesting thought. So it highlights the fact that you can track. It doesn't matter a decade, 1,000 years. You can track it all. And as the Secret Service was discovering last week.
It's definitely a good marketing play. And it's a good reminder that, you're right. This was the turning point in accepting this in exchange for goods and services, which in turn turns it into a currency.
I mean, I'm not sure whether they did it as much last year, but there was a lot of stuff with different exchanges and different blockchains and that promoting Bitcoin Pizza Day this year. Binance, for example, had different toppings scattered around their website. And if you collected all the toppings and you went to a certain place and placed the toppings on the pizza, you got some special thing, whether it was an NFT or they send you a T-shirt or something like. So, there was lots of sort of fun play on. And Papa John's had something like in the store where the guy bought the pizzas from. Pizzas were free all day or something like that. So, it's a good thing. It's a fun thing. At that time when he did buy that, and then, a couple of years after that, we had friends who, were buying their groceries and paying their electricity bills with cashing in Bitcoin and stuff like that. And they thought that they were on the gravy train to forever. And, we all know what happened. But ultimately that cost them so much money. But I think one of the things about that is, let's face it, there are days, special days of significance or remembrance in every industry. And for Bitcoin and for Web3 crypto, it's Bitcoin Pizza Day. And I think that is something that's like, you guys have President's Day, or we'll have Australia Day, or, like you'll have Mother's Day and all those sorts of things. It's one of those things that actually makes people feel a bit more connected with the space as well in terms of a community sense. And, from that point of view, I think that, long live the pizza. That's what I say.
So real fast, this poor bastard Laszlo in 2010 buys these pizzas and has been interviewed so many times. And it's the same question every time. Do you regret? Right. He says the same answer every time. No, I really don't. It was moving forward in the space, blah, blah, blah. $300 million he would have had.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Okay, I know for a fact that guy has trained himself to say that, but at the end of the day, he can't believe he had the most delicious, most expensive pizza ever to be consumed in human history.
I bet that guy's not bought a stitch from Papa John's since.
See, look, I'll tell you this. If this guy was smart, he would create an NFT collection about pizzas using the ordinals and try to recoup some of that back.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Again, just create these things, and this is the creation and the freedom that this guy would have at his disposal using all these things.
I'll ping him on Thursday. We can talk about it with him.
I mean, and ultimately, the thing is, if we were him, would you necessarily have held the Bitcoin until now?
Well, this is the old argument about Warren Buffett. If you had bought one share of Amazon back in 1997, like nobody knows at the time when, Pets.com is melting down that Amazon's going to live.
Yeah,
of course it's easy to look back and say, yeah, you could have bought.
He would have sold it at $500 or $1,000 or $2,000. Right. He wouldn't necessarily have held it to 60.
But maybe it would have just sat in a wallet and he wouldn't even thought about it.
Forgot about. Yes, that's correct.
I want to bring this full circle. Mike, you said something that's not just funny, very interesting. This whole concept of the technology and blockchain and what NFTs allow business owners to do, or regular individuals like Laszlo, is to create value for people and profit from it, right? This is a business at the end of the day. And so he could very easily leverage, the guy's got fame, that's 50% of money right there. Like, you can create an NFT issuance based off of the events that happened, and you can make it funny or not, whatever, but everyone in the space knows about Bitcoin Pizza Day. And
okay, so hold that thought. Who did he get the pizza from?
Who would he, or who did he?
Who did he? Like, who did he order the pizza from?
Papa John's.
You sure about that?
I'm 100% sure.
Okay, so talk about all of the use cases that we've mentioned in 27 previous episodes about a business-to-business collaboration effort. Papa John's slaps their name on this, and they would get X amount of things to their customers who hold those NFTs, whether it's a free pizza on Pizza Day, whether it's a buy one, get one on pizza. This is the marketing opportunities and the collaboration endeavors that are at these people's fingertips. And like you said, the story wrote itself. The story wrote itself. Like, there's nothing stopping there's nothing stopping us from starting a collection, doing the exact same thing, and taking the money that we bring in and buying everybody a Papa John's pizza just to get on their radar. Right?
Like, buying Papa John's.
What's that? I don't know about that.
Or buying Papa John's.
Papa himself got kicked out.
I mean, you're right, Mike, but people aren't thinking that way. This takes a very entrepreneurial thought process, and most big companies are non-entrepreneurially run.
But again, this is why I feel we are light years ahead of what is coming, right? Because once the people who understand these things start getting into those positions, light bulbs will start flying off. And now you're talking about a creative element, utilizing a technology with a massive budget behind it. That's where we're going to see mass adoption and scalability.
Two great points you make there, Mike. Number one, this was a turning point in history, was that the pizza thing is a goofy event, but yet it showed something to the world. Number two, that any business owner can leverage these tools to create marketing in any capacity they want. That is a new thing. You no longer need to have a huge marketing budget. It's almost like a crowdsourced marketing event if you've got the community.
I just want pizza.
Makes me hungry just thinking about it.
I think we're going to see more of that going forward. People still haven't gotten their arms around that though yet. Companies, large companies don't understand. And to that, my point in the comments there of entrepreneurially thinking, it used to be the old days if you managed an efficient business, right? How can you cut costs and produce whatever your widget is at a more effective manner? Now it's, let's think outside the box, and how can you leverage the community in a good way to deliver services and goods that they want and they'll pay for in a new avenue that didn't exist previous. I think we'll see more of that going forward.
But that it also opens up the door for a lot of these collaboration efforts, right? So I don't know what Papa John's relationship with Starbucks is, but Starbucks already has a specific clientele that are already utilizing blockchain technology. Why can't you have some sort of a cross promotion where you get a pizza in the evening after you get your mocha whatever frappuccino or something? There's opportunity there that I feel is still untapped.
Yeah, to that point, Mike,
I agree with that.
You could do a Bitcoin Pizza Day special at Papa John's, right? They can claim that. And only on that day, if you go to Starbucks, you get half price coffees or for whatever. And
exactly.
Starbucks gets in on that works as a group thing. All right.
Taking us into the next video. This is actually a 2-part video. And it talks about our buddy at Meta and Threads. So the first part is when Threads launched and had a boom out of the box type of experience. And the second is the end result of what occurred only 2 short weeks later. So the first video is dated on July 12th, 2023. And here we go.
Threads is basically the same as Twitter, but it lacks DMs, lists, native GIFs, polls, tagging.
Look how pumped you are, man. Just beyond excited.
And lives. This article discusses how the Fediverse is interoperable, but you are still the product being sold as in Web 2. So it raises the question of who actually owns your social graph, because Mark Zuckerberg is starting to make stirrings around, hey, we're moving into Web 3 now with Threads. So Michelle, you can lead the conversation because I'm curious your thoughts when you read this. What was your takeaway?
So one of the things I think, though, is that they're not actually using the term Web3 at all. They are talking about owning your own audience, being able to move around to different social platforms with your followers. However, we need to remember that we're dealing with Meta here, and that Meta might let you move around the metaverse that they are, but they, I'm not sure that they're going to let you take your audience to, say, Lens Protocol or to one of the others. Although they have mentioned Mastodon, which is an interesting thing. Perhaps they are planning on buying it. I don't know. Yeah, it's, unless you've lived under a rock in the past week, you have to have heard of Threads. And I think I'm not sure what the count is today for the number of people who are on it, but I think as of yesterday or the day before, it was over 100 million people. So quickest sign up for any app, any social platform in history. And partly because it was a seamless way in which you could join, because if you already had an Instagram following, then you could follow all the same people or have all the same people follow you, etc. And, you can exchange in between them and stuff. So from that point of view, it was pretty frictionless. And we've talked about that a lot, haven't we? In different ways in which Web3, crypto, wallets, blockchains, all of that stuff's been hard for people in terms of the amount of, friction there is in order for them to be onboarded. So from that point of view, they've done that really well. But Threads is not a Web3 app. It's not a Web3 platform. So from that point of view, we're still a long way from that. However, they are using terms like being able to decentralize, so as in take your followers to other platforms. But I think that they're going to want that to be other meta platforms and not necessarily other people in, the Web3 world.
So, Michelle, the official number is 108 million users on Threads as of today, being Wednesday.
Right. Yep.
That is, they did that I think they had 100 million in 2 days, if I read that right.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was 2 days, but tomorrow is a week. So 7 days tomorrow.
Crazy.
Or is it 7 days today and 8 days tomorrow? But yeah, it's only been a week, which is astounding.
I'm curious, Mike, your thoughts. I know you have strong feelings about Mark Zuckerberg's entire cadre and the horse he rode in on.
They've destroyed everything that they've touched. And this is no different. I don't trust those numbers as far as I can throw them. I don't believe them at all. I believe that a lot of those are auto accounts that were set up just based around any Instagram account that lived. The fact that you were able to integrate all of those systems into one application, that also triggers a few different questions that I have. As far as this interoperability between these different platforms, I think that is definitely the case because they've already done that with websites. They've created what they call the Facebook Pixel, which is essentially a claw that gets into the back end of every single website and pulls the data off of every website and feeds it into the Facebook algorithm. They've already had a lot of success with this. And if now they can create this social platform that is, I guess, less busy than something like Facebook, more comparable to something like Twitter, they're going to do the exact same thing. And frankly, they can throw around all the Web3 terms and DeFi terms that they want to. Let me just be very crystal clear. They are full of shit. They do not know what they are doing. They are completely destroying everything they touch.
I think that people are not surprised, and everything you say, they already know. No one's shocked that Mark Zuckerberg's going to try Plan B, the same thing that worked in the Plan A. But people are all flocking to it anyway, and that tells me they want something different.
No, it tells me that just like any new shiny object that appears, people are going to sign up to check it out. The amount of signups does not necessarily indicate what type of engagement it has to something compared to Twitter. Twitter will always remain the number one go-to source of those types of protocols. We've seen how many of them pop up over the last few years alone, including Web3 versions, and they just never capture the right amount of fire.
So folks generally tend to call Twitter the water cooler of society, right? That's where everyone chit chats. It's the news around the town circle. You don't think that Threads has the possibility to dethrone that?
No chance.
Okay,
absolutely no chance.
Unless Elon runs it into the ground and there is no Twitter anymore.
So by that
absolutely no chance. And I'll tell you why, because if anything, it's just going to be flooded with advertisements and people are going to get furious with it. Obviously everything new has a learning curve, right? But the amount of information that's being recommended to people is way outside their scope of interest right now. So if they're going to constantly flood people with information that they're not interested in, people are just not going to go to that platform anymore. Yeah. And he's definitely not shy about selling his soul for advertising dollars.
But I think that, one of the things that is interesting to think about, and, like people who listen to our podcast, run businesses, they're looking to build businesses and all of that sort of stuff. So, think about what's the long game here. Like, why have they necessarily done this? Now, have they done this because of all the problems currently with Twitter? Since Elon took over Twitter, now this could be, and like the cage fight that's now been called off, and the literal, as Elon said on Twitter, the dick measuring contest that is happening, because that's basically what it is. Sorry, guys. But, is it just that? Like, is this the two of them being dickheads? And eventually all the rest of us it'll just all die in or whatever, and we'll all go back to our respective corners and people will be on Facebook or Twitter and there'll just be nothing else. Or is this actually part of the plan? Now, if you follow the head of Instagram, Masari, on Threads, he seems actually pretty keen about developing this and making it better. Now, I don't really know very much about him at all because I'm not a huge Instagram user. I do use it, but mainly for personal stuff. I haven't really used it much for business before. So, let's talk about what's the business case for this for them.
So I'm going to jump on this for a second, getting beyond the billionaire ego face-offs. This raises the question, and the article touches on this, back to tie this to what we do here. Who owns the social graph? Right now, your circle of friends on any platform is your circle of friends. However, from a data harvesting perspective, as Mike has illustrated, it belongs to Facebook or whomever is running the platform. But people are aware of that now. They weren't aware of that 20 years ago. So now you've got this. I believe that there is a groundswell of folks who want some different version of this, because Threads turns out to be the same thing, right? It's a Twitter clone, as they admit. Is nothing new here.
So there was an opportunity, wasn't there, to create something different, something new, and all they did was they went back to the standard. Now, maybe it's if it's not broke, you don't have to fix it. They know it's worked. It works with Snapchat. It works on Instagram. It works on Facebook. It works on Twitter. It works on LinkedIn, the way posts come up, feeds come up. Maybe they've gone, let's just do something quite simple. I don't know.
But do you need the same functionality all over again? Like, if there's Coca-Cola in the market, do we need a Pepsi?
Well, only because you have people who choose to not like Coca-Cola.
I think that people want something that's not the same old, like, even down to the functionality. There's no need for this Threads. And yet it's got 100 million people.
Supposedly.
That's great. So I think the one thing I wanted to add a comment around, I feel like the signups to Threads, that mad scramble we saw, was a desperation plea to capture attention. Right? That was people were trying to get on top of it early. And as we saw the fall off in signups afterwards, the number of average active daily users on Threads fell off a cliff, which they weren't there to use the thing. They were there to capture the eyeballs that were going to the thing. And so that over time has proven, in my opinion, that Threads wasn't actually bringing anything new to the market, and they're suffering as a result of that.
Well, that's a spoiler alert to our next video. But I mean, look, this reminds me of like when everybody woke up and the U2 album was on their iPods and, their iPhones. I mean, nobody asked for it, but ultimately it was there. I feel like there was definitely a play to get people who just had the application installed on their hardware access to this to inflate those numbers even more so. So the next video,
I'd just like to say that I don't think the dick measuring contest has finished yet.
It's definitely not. You're 100% right on that one. But the follow up to that, as you pointed out, Mark, is only 2 weeks later, and we definitely dive into some of the unprecedented successes that Threads has had in that 2 week time frame. But it also highlights our first episode on Bolt Plus. Which I thought was really interesting. So I wanted to obviously shout out to all Bolt Plus Nation, all 8 million stream TVs that are there, our regulars that are in the chat week after week. You guys make this a lot of fun, and obviously this is where it all began on that on that Bolt platform. So here we go. We got the follow up to the Threads conversation.
Threads daily active users falls by 70%, 7-0. For those who aren't paying attention, Threads was launched back in July 7th. This is Mark Zuckerberg's challenge to Twitter, which is now X. Threads has lost half its active users since July 7th. It has now seen a 70% decline in daily active usage in that same time. So there's fewer people on it, and those who remain aren't using it as much. Meanwhile, Twitter's daily active usage has remained steady at 200 million users, and the average time on platform for that platform is 30 minutes a day. So, Michelle, we'll start with you on this one. I'm sure you've got some thoughts.
So the biggest problem Threads has right now is there's no API. So none of the automation software can link to it in order to post to Threads at, 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. like you can with, whatever app you use, whether you use Buffer or CoSchedule or Hypefury or, TweetDeck or whatever.
So hold on, Michelle. I know you're in the marketing world. For those who aren't, that means that every post that you want to put on Threads, the user has to manually type it out every time.
That's correct. So essentially, if you want to put the same post, say, on Twitter and on Threads, you can schedule it on Twitter through your whatever software you're using. But what you would have to do with Threads is you would have to copy and paste. You might have to put it into notes. There's also no desktop version, which means you have to use it on your phone. So the screen is like this big. So you have to cut and paste and copy from, say, a notes app or something else on your phone, put it into Threads, and then manually post it.
Like, I'm sure you're happy to see Zuckerberg scraping knee here. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that I called it the first time we brought this up. All those numbers were hyperinflated, but a 70% drop in usage, that's Bud Light numbers right there. So look, I have absolutely no hope that this software will rebound. I think this is going to be a trend. This is going to be the CNN Plus of the Facebook world, where it lasts 58 minutes and then it's diminished. And again, like, Elon Musk can change the name of Twitter to whatever the hell he wants to. Bottom line is, it's still attracting people to go to that platform every day.
So my comment is that for those who don't know, the most active posters on Threads are actually brands and not individuals. You can Google this. And so this is a platform culture issue. You've got the Facebook culture, where is predominantly ad driven. Now on Threads, which is technically, if you couldn't get your ads, the problem with Twitter, quote unquote, from the business owners, where it was you couldn't really monetize and advertise. So now you've got an opportunity to do what you did on Facebook in a Threads Twitter environment. It's going to be brand rush, the bum rush the stage, as they say. I think that folks don't want that. People aren't on social media to be advertised at or even crowed about how great their company is. It's
it attracts two things. Every time one of these new platforms comes out, it attracts two things. One is companies like you mentioned, and the second are influencers, people who feel like they can monetize based around engagement that they can bring about. But if nobody's engaging either with the companies and their ads or the influencers, they're going to stop investing into the platform.
Right.
And those people that have been really successful on LinkedIn or Twitter, a lot of them are doing a few different things and they're trying it out. But it's hard work when you have to actually open the app on your phone, type up the thing, post it to it, putting in videos, you've got to get them onto your phone or GIFs or, like all of that kind of stuff. It is hard. I disagree with Mike. I think that it will be around. I'm happy to be, told I was silly later. But I, they don't have to do anything other than roll out the features for this over the next 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. They're under no pressure to make money from it. They're under no pressure to, make sure it has all the bells and whistles and shines a light and whatever. They are just,
So expand on that theory for a minute. I mean, if you're going to take the responsibility and saying that, if they fail, you'll get the I told you so. If there is no engagement now, if they fix an API algorithm that allows creators to post it easier, it's still not attracting anybody because nobody's on the platform.
Well, Michelle,
so how will that change?
When you can plug it into your automated machinery, which I want to talk about in a second after that, because that's where it's going.
But we're not talking about a content creator. We're talking about a user being exposed to that content. If there's nobody there to absorb the content,
like the content creators are the engine behind all these platforms
at the moment. Yeah,
there's still user engagement. Again, if everybody stops using Facebook today, all of those content creators that are posting on Facebook will fail because the platform will fail. There's nobody to target to.
Define failed, platform failed. Do you mean that there's just no usage?
Nobody is going on to absorb the content, right? I'm paying Facebook money to advertise or put content in a platform. If nobody's there on the other end receiving that content, I'm not going to invest my time or money into putting that content out there, which means the APIs and all of the tools are useless.
There's still 13 million people on it, though.
13 million in the world? That's down 70%. You're going to tell me the companies are going to invest into that?
Europe doesn't have it yet, but they don't want companies to invest in it yet. This is the thing. The thing is they're not going to do advertising minimally until next year, which means they can spend the next 3 months, 6 months doing the proper things, getting usage back up because they'll spend a shit ton of money on advertising how now you can do X, Y, and Z, which you couldn't before. People will slowly come back, and that's when you'll start to get normal users adding it from their Instagram.
July 26, 2023. Let's flag this.
I'm going to go on
this episode. We're building a foundation to recreate the exact same thing that we ran away from.
Yes.
That's what this is. There's no but. They need a token in order to execute that Web3. They will never relinquish that control.
One of the things that they are talking about, though, is that you are able to take your users with you, and none of the Web2 platforms allow you to do that.
And you believe that from Facebook?
Well,
come on. I mean, look, there's an ulterior motive to everything that they do.
They don't need to say it, do they? They didn't need to
Apple doesn't need to say that your shit is secure, but it's not. Everything is private, but it's not. I mean, it's all a marketing play. It's all designed to be a marketing play. Well, they used to be like this, but now they're not. Now they're the good guys. No, they're still the assholes with a different mask on.
Do you think that Threads gets shut down, Mike? You think this is the end of Threads?
Is it the end of Threads? Maybe they keep it alive, but it will never compete with something like X or Twitter, whatever the hell we're calling it now. Like, I believe the last time we discussed this was the death of Twitter. Just like Web3 was, or AI was the death of Google. Like, these platforms know how to survive. They just got to stay in their own lanes. Facebook wants to cater to a specific audience. That's fine, but that's a generational audience. That audience will fade itself away. Okay. And that over time, Facebook, they're not going to be able to evolve into something new that's going to be attractive to a younger audience. Facebook will die out over time. It has to.
It's meta, but you're right. They will just become the holding company for whatever the real thing is that's making them their money.
Well, it'll be whatever. And you mentioned it earlier, the mergers and acquisitions, right? Facebook didn't come up with Instagram. They acquired it, right? They saw something in that and they acquired it. It was a means to generate more data.
Is that Kevin Systrom?
I don't know who they bought it from, but they bought it for an absorbently low price based on evaluation. And those guys saw yachts and champagne bottles in their future. So they jumped on it. But that's the point. So do they have?
So I want to make a comment there, Mike, about platforms and audiences. You made a really interesting point here. People mistakenly believe that these platforms and competing with each other, it's based and predicated on the functionality. They copy each other's functionality. We know that. But it is not why people are on these platforms. You can copy functionality, but it comes down to psychographics. The people on Twitter think of themselves markedly differently than the people on X or whatever, on Threads. And so you've got this belief of these are my people or not my people on a platform. And this isn't just confined to X versus Threads. This is the case across every social platform.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. I just feel like, again, this was more of a trial balloon for a lot of people versus trying to make that their home. And that's why we saw such a reduction. But again, if the users are not there to absorb the content, the new American dream of becoming trendy overnight on one of these platforms can't exist if there's no users to absorb that content.
Yeah, good point.
So TechCrunch article from October 26th. I just Googled it. The headline is Threads isn't dead.
Someone got paid to make that article.
There's a zombie joke in here somewhere, but keep going.
But they've extended the features now. You can put GIFs in, you can run polls. Masari's talking about, I don't know whether that's in already now, but you know, they're looking at having views and, you know, followers and counts. You can now follow people from the, you know, from the actual app rather than having to go into a different screen. You can like press a plus button and follow them if you see something. So they have been making improvements. And my understanding is that more recently in the last month or so, that I think the people that are sick of Twitter, of X, are now actually going, well, you know how I created that Threads account back in the day when they started, I might go in there and see what's up now and see if I can get, you know, some engagement with people, because there are creators on there and there are businesses on there.
That's my point, though, Michelle. It's not about the functionality, right? It's about, are the people there, and is it worth my time to are my people there? So when Elon Musk,
and for some people, I think that's the answer is yes.
Right, of course. There's always somebody for you, no matter what you're in. But when Elon gets on there and he's being a nut job Elon on X, and he's talking anti-SEC, and we have to get off the planet because humanity's going to kill itself, or whatever he's preaching, those people that buy into that are all there. They don't want to go to Threads. And the people who hate Elon Musk don't want to be on X.
But, you know, in the last week or so, and this will date when we're actually recording this, but was it IBM have pulled all their ads now off of X because of,
I don't think he cares.
Sorry? No, I'm sure he doesn't. But at the end of the day, increasingly, while he isn't making money on the everything app and whatever it is that he's trying to create, he's decreasing the amount of revenue from advertising by all these other things. So eventually that becomes a problem.
I think we can establish that he's not going to make money the traditional way with that platform, period. It is whether he can invent something new or he goes out of business.
Time will tell.
Yeah. All right. Keep going, Mike.
But the same reason for why they don't have to use Threads to make money right now, and the fact that they have the resources behind them, if, and I'm saying it's a big if they're actually committed to making Threads an X/Twitter actual competitor longer term, they have the resources to be able to do that. Now let's not and manpower, you know, people power, all of that
financial,
stuff.
yeah.
But let's not underestimate how much, if these two hate each other, that they will do. Like Zuckerberg will want to do this.
Again, their pissing match means nothing to me. Facebook is all about data collection. Understand something. Facebook is all about data. I wrote a 26 blog report on this. That's the point. That's why there's 70% reduction in activity, because people don't want it. They don't want to be tracked. They don't want to have their information bought and sold, whether it's now or a year and a half from now.
I think it's too early to say.
Time will tell, but it's going to be a colossal failure. They've tried this before. They stole everything from Snapchat and tried to implement it in Instagram. And their attitude was, well, even though it's patented, come after us. People do not like that in corporations. They do not like that for investment purposes.
Agreed.
It's great. It's great.
Well, I mean,
it was a bit fiery, that episode, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, look, it's great conversation. It's important conversations to have. You know, either way, I still firmly believe that regardless on whatever Musk or does or does not do on Twitter, people have become so addicted to that platform that it's going to be a monumental task for anybody and any budget to build a platform that will navigate people off of there permanently, let's just say. I still feel that they will definitely try to dip their toes into it, however.
I think it's much more, I mean, it's always kind of been where journalists and news agencies and outlets and that sort of stuff posted things first and everything. And to be perfectly honest, when there was information in the current week of things that have been going on, without saying too much to date the show too much, I went to X to see what people were saying and what had been said, because I knew that was just one place where I could go. But ultimately, if they're the only people that are left, there's not people to look at their stuff either, and they'll stop posting there as well.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a continuing theme throughout the upcoming year of how that platform X specifically evolves, how Threads tries to respond and steal what X used to be. I think that the jury's still out on all this.
Well, an interesting integration could potentially be AI. And maybe that's something that, Threads incorporates a little bit faster than what Twitter would, and that might change the game too. So we'll see what happens. I mean, look, you said it would be anything relevant would occur next year anyway. So by all means, it's still a valid argument on both sides here. But moving on to the next slate of videos, this is of the similar nature, a little bit condensed in timeline. But this one discusses friend.tech and the eruption that occurred with that, followed by the monumental avalanche that occurred only 6 days later. So let's start with our first video dated August 23rd of this year.
This comes to us via Cointelegraph. FriendTech generates over $1 million in 24 hours, surpassing Uniswap and Bitcoin networks. So in a nutshell, FriendTech is a new decentralized social platform. It's a new network. It allows users to tokenize their social network by buying and selling shares of connections. We'll revisit that in a second. So basically, folks who buy these shares can then send private messages to the folks in that other person's network. So this has sparked discussion of the revenue model of how social works. This new DeSo platform has generated $1 million in fees in 24 hours. This outperforms Uniswap, Bitcoin Network, and others. So this is something to watch, whether or not you agree with it. We'll discuss the details, but I'm going to let Michelle lead us through this conversation. Michelle, please.
What is it that they're doing? There's no roadmap. What's the long-term game plan with this? Like, is this the ultimate? Is it going to be the ultimate rug pull? At the end of it, the amount of money we're talking about, people are putting in things.
Yes.
After
I win.
maybe 2
I
days
have
ago,
to win.
my
That's
husband
the best prediction.
John got an invite, and I'm like, oh, quick, yes, use it because we're going to talk about it this week. Really want to, sign up and whatever. Now, he's been in crypto since 2016, 17, and it was like 4 steps before he got to the point where he had to add ETH. And at that particular moment, we were having breakfast in bed. And he said, oh, I've got to, get my other wallet and da-da-da. And then we just forgot about it. But he didn't think it was that easy to actually sign up. So he's wondering how it is that people that aren't necessarily crypto native, because he knows a lot about this stuff, are going to be able to onboard like this. That said, I think they've sort of talked about 100,000 odd users, which isn't really a lot. And, I don't know. I want to hear what Mike says, but
so I see a scenario like this, an article, a situation that kind of is the new hot thing, and it makes me question if people really want to just get screwed over. Is there an appetite for that? Is there a desire for it? Is there a social status that says I was a part of the thing that screwed everybody over?
How are you getting screwed over, Mike, potentially?
I mean, I look at this and, and you brought up video games earlier, so I'll reference that. Back in the day, you play all these games and your parents would say, you'll never amount to anything if you keep playing those games. Well, now they have e-gamers that are making millions, right? So I've gone to war with major marketing companies because they used to tout, well, we'll get you X amount of likes on your posts. And my response to that as a business guy is, well, likes don't pay my bills. Well, now I guess they could. You're able to invest into the engagement of somebody's post and then re-engage with them. So the whole thing to me is it's sort of upside down, but we've brought this up before when we bash on the social platforms and the monsters that they've become. They feed into people's addiction for affirmation. And now you're actually monetizing that now too, right? So where does this end up? God only knows. I don't have high expectations for it. I'm really not convinced it's 100% Web3. They might token it. They might tokenize it, but at the end, what's it built on? How is it a community-led ordeal? How is it possible that you're going to be able to prevent bots from going out and, I guess, investing into people's comments and likes to drive up the revenue share of that, and therefore create a higher demand, which would ultimately, be similar to insider trading on a stock?
So I'm going to say 2 things. Number one, you raise a good point. What is the definition of Web3? Web3, in the case of this app, FriendTech, is simply having a token. Your argument, Mike, I'm sure, is that community has to come first. And of course, I would agree with that. But the second part I'll take issue with, you mentioned it's a desire for affirmation. I think it's a desire of monetization.
one of the problems I have, you're right, Mike. Like, for example, it's not your wallet that you create your account on. So there's no self-custody. So immediately, what does that tell us for things in Web3 previously that have been like that?
But isn't that how Web3 is going to develop? I mean, I'm being a realist here. People, I agree, it should be, you have your wallet, it's all community driven. Right now, it's all been money grabs. That's all we've seen. And so...
Sure.
Well, I would push back heavily on that. That's not all we've seen.
Maybe
there are
not.
still a lot of good that has been coming from this technology and a lot of use cases that use, I guess, self-controlled wallet systems in order to operate their projects. However, the custodial side of things, I would debate you on this, is not the way that this is going to evolve. I think that at first it will become a custodial, but ownership will lie just the same as you own your phone number or you own your email address. Well, that's just it. Do you is a key question. Your email address lives on a platform, on a server in some warehouse somewhere, right? It could theoretically be accessed by anyone at any time who has access keys to it. The difference with the wallet is that it could start out that way, and then it could evolve into, well, now I move it from that server into my server. and I control it, and I'm able to pull those elements off. And this is really the first step. So when we talk about the easy way to onboard the masses, I would argue that, having the wallets incorporated on hardware, phones, computers, that is going to be a massive first step rather than custodial elements, because the custodial side of things, it's going to get lost in the wind.
And then there's the Web 2 aspect of there's a social network, and this is a new way for people to make money from their social network. Web 3 aside, that's going to drive this process forward. That's why they've made $1 million in 24 hours. It's not that people want to get in Web 3, it's that people want to make money.
People have to pay 0.01 ETH to join. So that's around, $13 or $14 or so at the moment. I think, no, actually, it might be $10. $10, it's £13 or something like that. And then what happens is you buy what originally they called shares in your favorite influencer, which they have now changed to keys, because I think that the Fed chair scared them. He must have looked at them with his angry eyes or something, and so they changed it. So I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that, Mark. So that's how they make their money. And then by buying the shares, keys, the price of that particular person, say if it was me, and more people come on board, the price of being in my circle rises up. And some of them, there's a couple of them that have been as much as $5,000 for one.
Can you see how you can easily manipulate this, though?
Oh, of course. Oh, my goodness. As I said before, there's going to be lots of discussion about this. I actually think it's entirely being manipulated at the moment. The numbers are so small that you could have created an AI bot to do this.
That's my point, right? So that's a lot what Web3 is. It's creating these automated processes in order to execute these functions automated, autonomously, right? So you're not sitting there at a computer pushing buttons and trying to and invest and do all these things. That's really what NFTs were essentially designed to do. They were designed to execute these particular functions within a given smart contract. The likelihood of market manipulation and I guess creating these systems that creates that hype and that FOMO, and this relates to the way I started my comments on this whole thing. It's just another excuse and another way for people to ultimately want to get screwed over here. For me, I look at this as the wheel being reinvented, right? Clubhouse existed. There was, celebrities and stuff that popped into clubhouse chats, and people didn't expect, and they were all like, oh, I was in and I talked to blah, blah, blah. So, now you have a chance to buy into that particular network. How authentic is it really going to be?
So it lends credence to Mike's theory, in my opinion, of potential rug. When you've got $1 million in 24 hours, you're going to milk this baby, and you're going to change whatever you need to change to keep the engine running. What is the long-term plan? That's what, if I were an investor or if I were looking to buy shares for keys, I'd be thinking to myself, what is there? I want to see podcast interviews and conversations with the founders.
Yeah. Well, it was Michelle that called the rug, not me, but yeah.
It's an interesting conversation. I agree with all of it.
It's crazy how fast that evolved. And like you pointed out, Michelle, I mean, watching these videos back to back compared to something like Meta, right, where we had hundreds of millions of users versus 100,000 users that had that same type of attention and money grab. It's definitely remarkable. And again, it shows that, there still is some sort of an appetite for people to get the short end of the stick. It's pretty nuts.
I think that the whole concept of what Friend Tech was trying to do of being able to monetize your own followers, we're still seeing that attempt going on in other versions of it. There's been a couple of apps like that, and they're pitching it now not as so much the Web3 thing, but as the DSO thing, right? Same concept. The point is, I think that whole business model fails, but being able to spot it early on it's so ruggable, to coin a term here. That's exactly where this is the throwback to the old NFT early days of how do we make money with apes and pictures.
Yeah.
Well, let's watch the conclusion of our follow-up episode, which was 1 week later, August 30th, 2023.
So this platform came out a week ago or so, roughly. The company revenue dropped 95% in that week. The app generated $1 million on the first day of launch, and now is generating about $80,000 a day. So the bloom is off the rose here, as they say. What are your thoughts on this one, Michelle? I know this was you wanted to do the follow up on this. We even thought at the time this was a bit hairy.
Look, and the reason why I said we have to talk about it is that, okay, so, there have been booms and busts in Web3 over the past 5 years. Is this the one the quickest? This is even quicker than not that Threads is Web3, but this is even quicker than the drop off from Threads. Even Threads kept it up for 2 weeks. So this is less than a week. It came out on Monday the 21st, and by Sunday, so it wasn't even a week, it had dropped in revenue by 95%. And there are now people going, oh, but I bought this and I bought that, and now my coin or key, whatever it's called now, not a share, my key is worth, whatever. And it's astounding in its rise and its fall, but we predicted it here first. So everybody really should be listening to us every week because they get to know all about this before they happen.
Mike, you have strong opinions on this whole thing with Frentech. What do you think?
I mean, I had to actually do a genetic test and see if I was related to Nostradamus. But the writing was on the wall with this. I mean, look, we said it specifically last week with respect to people wanting the opportunity to get screwed over again. And they were not disappointed.
And they got it.
They got it for sure. I mean, I agree with you. This is probably a record-setting pace for it. But, I mean, this had the grounds for so many problems on the onset. Is it dead? Probably not. They'll figure out a way to resurface it. But I think that, once the Band-Aid is ripped off and people jump on the boat just to jump off the boat, there's still people left on paddling, and I'll reference the thumb in the air, seeing which way the wind is blowing. This is no different. People jump in on that and they jump out quicker than anything because their attention spans are minuscule. They see an opportunity to try to, do a quick cash grab as fast as possible. And that's how these little trendy pieces are going to keep popping up left and right. Some of them are backed by big tech such as Threads. But once the dust settles and the smoke is cleared a little bit, you can actually see where the foundation and the root of all these things are. That's when you're going to be able to make the determination if they're sustainable or not.
That it's not just that the volume in terms of what they're earning has dropped. Like people who have paid, real money for the ability to be in an influencer's DMs, because that was one of the big selling points. There's Twitter at the moment is littered with, I paid, 10 for this and now it's worth 0.01, that kind of stuff, like astounding. I'm going to start, when this happens from now on, we should just start burning $50 notes or something like that, because that's what they're doing. Maybe we could start a DAO like that, Mike. People could send us their money and then we could burn half of it and then go, oh, bad luck. That's what's happening here.
I'm going to remind both us and the listeners, our conversation last week was really that this is probably not going to work. Clearly we were right, but I mean, not tooting horns. It wasn't hard to see. But I also do think there's something here of the kernel of an idea of where Web3 may go. This is shining a light on not the right way to do it, but there is a new business model underneath all the ash. If you take a look, I think selling your followers up the river for money, probably not a good idea. However, the fact that there's another new way to make money, well, that iteration of it isn't good, but there's probably some version that could work because this is a new way to make money right now. And what's the one thing that business is always looking for is what's a new way to make money?
I'll stand by that. I feel like there is a business model hidden under here. It's not selling your followers. It's being somehow able to enlarge the community and pay the people, but not giving them tools to just sell their followers. That's the wrong approach.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's dead either.
Tell me.
Well, 2 weeks ago, didn't we do a Friends.tech rebirth or reincarnation?
It's the
zombie stories that won't die.
These little rats are going to pop their heads up in different holes over the course of history here. And I think that as we head into the new year, the technology still exists, right? There's still foundational pieces that are in play. And, you might see them resurface when they need an infusion of cash. And, it's just a matter of who's still in the wishing well that would be able to fork that over to them.
I think this is a good way to bring this to a conclusion. This is an interesting look back over the last year and more so, Mike. Good job putting together those clips. Thank you for doing that for us. I think that
great job, Mike. Well done.
We're seeing a lot of themes that we'll be revisiting in the future weeks. But I can say this. A lot of what we said came true. Some of what we said didn't. But the reality is, keeping a finger on the pulse of how this is evolving, there is no question that blockchain represents a brand new way for companies to monetize. That there's no question that blockchain represents a new way to market what you're doing. So we like to call it the digital media revolution, but this is actually the evolution of business. And we are keeping close tabs on this, both for ourselves and for the listeners. I feel like these look backs are interesting and fun, but it's a small step on the way of a much bigger story that's unraveling before our eyes. And not just us, across the globe right now, we're seeing the evolution of a new way of companies being formed, commerce happening, and people building small businesses into, frankly, lifestyles.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. And, 2024 is still a horizon on where this is going to go, right? I mean, these things tend to seem like they're happening fast when you're stuck in the minutia, but over the grand scheme of things, we're still in the very, very early days of all of this. And that's why, week to week, when we discuss these things and we have an opportunity, such as an episode like this, to look back, it really does show that the thought process still is pretty consistent from the business application.
So I'm going to say that we're back every week, 4 p.m. Eastern time, YouTube, Bolt Plus. We may be thinking about Twitter here, folks. For now,
Twitter doesn't exist anymore.
So the conversation behind the scenes was that there's now going to be an X video version that we're thinking about. But keep going, Michelle.
There is a live streaming version now, but I don't know. We'll see. we'll take that under advisement. And I just want to say a couple of things. One is I hope all of our listeners have had a great Christmas and that they have a really good New Year. We will be back on the 3rd of January and we're going to do a prediction show. So we're going to have some questions that we'll, quick fire answers to, and we'll also have some things that we're going to look at of what we think is going to be the state of the digital media revolution come next Christmas. So that will be that'll make looking back easier for you, Mike, for next year.
Well, on that note, again, happy holidays to everybody. I got one more video for you guys that just kind of wraps up the year and really summarizes, and we're going to date back a little bit. This is our in-person podcast at CEX back in May, and it's just a brief video, but it really caps off a hell of a year with you guys. And again, I look forward to this every week. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mike.
Me too. Bye.
It is an honor to be serving with you two and helping educate people in the space. We're going to go around for last comments and then we'll wrap up. But I wanted to just say that it's really a lot of fun doing this with you two. Mike, we'll start with you. Final thoughts?
My final thoughts. We are continuously at the tip of the spear in this, and I'm honored to be here with you guys. And I look forward to it every week. It's exciting. It's fun. Even some bickering back and forth. It's great. We have a great chemistry together. I look forward to the next 12 months and beyond to see where we can continuously make sense of something that is very clustered at this moment.
Michelle, what do you think?
Well, ditto to all that. I love you guys. I think it's fantastic. It's been a great thing for me to be here with you. I will say that I think within 2 years, we will have a Web3 by 3 in real life event.
Oh boy. Oh my gosh. So for my part, it's hard to stomach
throw that in there.
I can't stand working with either one of you. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, well, bad luck.
I will say that the themes I see are threefold. Number one, as I mentioned, the rise of AI. As we all know, it's just nonstop. But it does
That's going to settle, though.
Yes, but it does tie into blockchain.
Sure.
Number two, the growing importance of real life. We're a testimony to that. And,
Yes.
and number three, that Web3 is real. I know that sounds so basic, but people didn't know that last year. And many people now are still not sure. These big corporates that are starting to dip their toe in the wrong way are learning, wait, you can really shoot yourself in the foot if you don't know what you're doing.
One of the things that brands are doing, which is going to be helpful to us, is they're not calling it blockchain or Web3 or NFTs.
I don't think it'll be called Web3.
What they're saying, like, Starbucks program, you get stamps.
Because people are familiar with those.
Reddit, it's a digital collectible. So
And these are great ways to knock down the onboarding process,
Yeah,
right? So it's
yeah.
great.